I'll be the microphone stand for her.
This is a garamute. Now, in Papua New Guinea, well, first of all, today, if you would want to send a message or talk to someone about something, you're going to call them on your phone or text them on your cell phone, aren't you? Well, in Papua New Guinea, if you need to contact someone and maybe a long distance away and tell them something, maybe you need to talk to your tribal members about something, you will use the garamute. And how you use it is that you beat out your message with long and short sounds, kind of similar to Morse code. Now, I wanted to demonstrate how you would do this. And as you can see, it's made out of wood parts there. Okay, this is a message you would use if you needed to tell the people it's time to come to church for service. Or maybe there's a meeting at your village and they need to come. And this is how this is the message that they would hear. 3 longs. That means get ready and come to church. Okay, here's another message. Now, when you would use this one is that you need to tell your tribal leaders, come right away, and we're going to be involved in a fight, and you need to get here right now. So when you hear that, get your swords or whatever and get here. Okay, now, I'm not going to tell you what this one is. While I'm playing it, see if you can, or sounding it out, see if you can kind of get an idea of what you might think it means. Any guesses? What's that?
Close.
That means someone has died. Kind of sounds like a dirge. You know, dun, 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 you know. All right, that type of thing. Now, if you need to send a message, that would be for like the ones I just played would be like remote villages that might be too awful far away. Say you need to get some very, very important message across, but over a large distance. So you would have to, your garamute would be constructed like this, but it would have to be much larger. It would have to be, and I tried to find it this morning, I couldn't find it, but I have a picture of one of the very large ones. They take a big tree trunk, maybe something like that, turn it on its sides, and then just construct it like this, except it's very big. And that is the type of one that you would use for a long distance. And if, say you needed to get the message to go 10 miles or something like that, that's when you would use those big, larger ones. All right. And the way you'd have to send your message for a long distance or a wide area in a special way. You start, the original person at their location would beat out that message, and then it could travel probably as far with the big one, 10 miles. Then that remote village takes the same message, beats it out, and they know the direction it's supposed to go. And if you continue that, you keep going from village to village to village, you could cover an area approximately the size of Indiana in about an hour. So the garamute is the telephone in remote areas in Papua New Guinea.
Would you open your Bibles with me? I was out of the States for 10 years, and I was a little surprised to find out when I came back that some pastors don't use their Bible on Sunday. I don't know why, but I pastored Southport for 14 years before we resigned down there, and I used my Bible. I'm reading this morning from 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, and I'm going to start reading at verse 6. I have probably different translation than you do, but I think you'll be able to follow along whatever translation you have. I think you'll be able to follow along what's being said. You've been standing a lot today. Is it okay if you remain seated for the reading? Normally I stand for that, but okay. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 6. Eupla I kissum tak belong God, now plenty heavy, I bin come up long Eupla. Tas o Eupla I bin behind passen belong Mipla, now bigpla, now Holy Spirit I bin kerapum you, now Eupla I amamas. Tas o, now Eupla I bin soem good pala passen long all get a man marry, I believe long Christ, long province, Macedonia, na Achaia. That's verse 8. Were you able to follow along in the translation of the... I got a different one. I'll translate it for you. You received the message of God, His holy word. And a lot of you people became strong in that. And you began following my example and the example of God Himself. And the Holy Spirit has been working in your life and stirred up your heart until you were completely filled with joy. Now, you also have been showing what it means to be a Christian by the way you live your life and the things that you do to all the other people around who understand what it means to be a Christian. They see your example, and they are trying to follow your example. That's great. And the things that you have been saying and the things that you have been doing, it goes out all over the country like the cry of the garamut. That's the little instrument that that size is mostly used for, rhythm in a band in a local church. Really big garamuts are for sending messages around. But the things that you're doing and the things that you're saying and the way that you're living your life goes out like the cry of the garamut. When Kay and I, we were pastors here actually, when we felt God calling us into missions, we filled out our application and went up to the post office, the ones hidden back in there. And some Chinese fellow was coming along and we said, would you take our picture? And he said, why? And it was cold, freezing. And well, we're going to send an application to become missionaries. And so we had our application with us and we got our picture taken in front of the post office. I'd been a pastor already for 21 years, and the idea that at our age we would be accepted in missions was kind of a little far-fetched. I really thought maybe it was like Abraham, the Lord wanted me to be willing to go. And then we got a call back from Kansas City, and the head of the mission said, I got your application and I want to talk to you. And he talked to me for over an hour. And he said, I haven't talked to anybody here about your application, you and your wife. I've kept it. And now I put it out in the hopper for everybody else to read, and I'm going to let it float around the department and see what happens, and if they come back to me and talk to me, and if their mind's the same as my mind. And then about a week later, we got a call, and he said, look, get the first flight out you can and get to Kansas City right now. We need to see you. Well, the only flight that was going out at that time was what they used to, you guys know what a no-bag flight is? You ever been on a no-bag flight? You just carry, what you can carry in your hands, and you go from airport to airport dropping off luggage. And we went around several airports that night and finally ended up in Kansas City in the middle of the night. And they said, oh, well, we're glad you've made it. Now we want you to start filling out all these forms. And it was about 12 o'clock at night. And we went from one meeting after another for the next 2 or 3 days, just one meeting after another, and all these forms we had to fill out, tests we had to take, and different kinds of things. And then they said, well, there's a meeting going on at a hotel downtown, and you need to meet some people down there. So we went down there, and we met a group of people who were in charge of world missions. I would call them the world missions version of the Sanhedrin. And so we were meeting with the Sanhedrin, and they sat us down in this kind of ritzy hotel room there, and there were chairs all around and a lot of people sitting around, and just fired questions at us for about 4 hours. One question after another, after another, after another. One question that got repeated a couple of times was, do you wear shorts? They weren't asking her, they were asking me. No, I don't wear shorts. Ever since I grew up, I've been wearing big boy pants. I don't wear shorts. And then it came up again, and then it came up again. I thought, what in the world? I said, I get it. I kind of get it. I get what's going on. The story going around is our district was real conservative, and we were very conservative about things like dress and other things. And I said, look, I wear what I want. You know, you wear what you want. He said, no, you don't understand. This guy here is second in command for world missions, and we just had to send him to Africa to sort out a fight between two missionaries who were having an argument over wearing shorts. And the argument got so big and so important that it began to split up the church in that country in Africa, and we had to send him over there to straighten out the fight between the two missionaries because they were causing a confusion in the churches. And I said, well, after I stopped laughing, I said, let me tell you something. There's a whole world out there, and there's a good number of people in it that are going to hell. What in the world are you doing wasting your time and your money on shorts? Seems like we ought to have some more important issue than that. And they said, well, you guys go downstairs and we'll talk among ourselves. And so we went downstairs, and in a little while, they came down and they said, you've been hired. You're going to Papua New Guinea. And I thought, I wanted to go to Bolivia. We'd been to Bolivia before, you know. Well, if you go there and do a good job for 2 years and you come back and you still want to go to Bolivia, we'll send you to Bolivia, but we need you in Papua New Guinea right now. Okay. You know, I thought I'd be Joe Flunky missionary going out doing the jobs that everybody needed, you know, done on the mission field, and we were willing to do that. And all of a sudden, they said, you're going to be the principal of the Bible college in Papua New Guinea. I was running a sort of a Bible college here in Indianapolis at that time for our district, back when we had that thing going. And I thought, yeah, isn't there anybody there who knows how to run that college? And they said, well, there's a lot of people there who think they do, but we don't think they can, and we want you to go over and do it. And I thought, oh, great. But we agreed, and we went over there. We didn't know the culture. We didn't know the language. I knew quite a bit of the history about Papua New Guinea because I'm a kind of a World War II nut. You know, I've done a lot of study, and a good deal of World War II was fought right around, the waters are right around Papua New Guinea. There's a lot of sunken ships around there. But we didn't really understand the culture or anything else, and when we went there, we started immediately, you know, just doing the job of the principal of the school without any knowledge of how to speak the language. Can you imagine attending church for almost a whole year and not knowing how to speak the language? Couldn't understand anything the preacher was saying, couldn't understand the words of the songs that were being sung, couldn't understand what a lot of people were saying to you. I mean, it was very confusing. I had a dictionary and I was studying, and they loaned a guy to me who was supposed to teach me how to speak Pidgin, but he, you know, would just say a few words to me every once in a while, and I would repeat those. I learned how to greet people. I learned how to read the Bible phonetically, but I didn't know what I was reading. And that was about all I learned. And then we had graduation. We just had gotten there in our first graduation. 13 students graduated from the college. We had more pastors on the field who died of malaria than that. How are we ever going to replace those pastors? How are we ever going to grow the church with just 13 pastors? I've got to get out and talk to some people about God calling them to preach. And I went from one district assembly to another, to another, to another, and they came. Boy, we had about 2 months off before the next time started. We had to build buildings fast because these students came with their wives and their children, and we had to, cut down trees and split them and put up walls, and then we got woven blind and made walls out of the woven blind, and then we cut grass and we wove the ceilings, and we hung a little light bulb in every house so that they could have electric light. They didn't even have that in their villages, but they had it there on the campus. I think we built 19 houses in December and January, 19. We had a student who had graduated. His name was Joseph, and they thought Joseph would take one of the churches that were available, and he said, no. Well, what do you want to do, Joseph? He said, there's a place called East Cambia. I want to go up there, and I want to start the work of the Church of the Nazarene up there. And their district superintendent finally agreed with them, let him and his wife and family go up there. I sent one of the guys from my staff up there to teach a couple of classes because he had 3 or 4 guys right away who had gotten saved. And he said God had called them already to preach, so I sent a fellow up there to have some classes with them. And when he got back, I said, what's it like getting up there in East Cambia? He said, well, first of all, you ride a truck until you come to the end of the road and there's no other place to go. Then you get out and you start walking through a swamp. And then you come to mud. And the mud is up almost to your chest. And you wade through that mud for about 8 hours. And there's no place to sit down or rest. You keep moving or you die. And then, when you get to the other side, you fall down on the bank in exhaustion and lay there for a little while and try to eat a little bit of food and sleep. And the next morning you get up and you start climbing the mountains. And it was almost straight up from that swamp. And when we got up there, the place was called Mount Ow. I thought that's a great name for it because it hurts to get I don't know if you've ever been to mountains, but some mountains can really hurt you climbing them. So anyway, he climbed clear up to the top of Mount Owl, and that pastor we had just sent up there a few months before had already started 4 churches in that area. Oh, great. I was talking to the district superintendent who covered that new area too, and I said to him, Brother Andrew, how many churches do you have on your district? We have district assembly coming up, and I need to bring some things to talk to them about the college. And he said, no, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? He said, I don't know. How could you not know how many churches are on your district? Do you know any DS who doesn't know how many churches are on their district here in the States? And I'm a new guy there. I don't understand what's going on. He said, well, your students from your college are going out and they're starting churches on Sundays. And some of your staff is going out there and starting churches. And you and your wife have gone out and started churches. You guys at the college have started 24 churches. And there have been other people, laymen have left churches and they've gone and started churches. And then Joseph's up there. Only the Lord knows how many churches he started up there. And he said, I don't know how many churches we have on our district. Maybe we have 108. And that was great. We got back to the district assembly, and finally they reported he didn't have 108. He had 142 churches. And Joseph was there. And he had 4 guys from that area with him, these East Cambia guys. And they were excited to death. And Joseph said, I want to introduce you, principal, to these men. And I shook their hand. And he said, they have come down with me from the mountains. It took us 4 days to walk down here, but they've come down with me from the mountains to tell you that they're joining the Bible college. I've been building buildings for 2 months just to house the people we got coming, and now you're going to dump 4 more guys on me? And this is Friday, and school starts Monday? And I've got to get 4 more houses ready? Well, yes. Do they even have any money? Well, I have a little money. It costs 600 kina apiece for the students, and Joseph had 400 kina total. 100 for each. Wait a minute. Are these guys married? Oh, yes. And they've got children? Oh, yes. A lot of children. Well, how's our wife and children going to get down from Mount Al, across that swamp and all that other stuff down here to the Bible college? Because we educate the women the same time we educate the men. And in some cases, we've had women who are called to ministry, so we educate the women and we educate the men. And when their education gets high enough, we try to move them up educationally. He said, well, we'll go back and get them. I said, you can't do that. It's 4 days up there and 4 days back. By the time you get back, we will have already started college, and they'll miss several classes, and they're not going to be able to pass that class if they miss 4 days of classes, and we can't do that. And Joseph shook his head and he said, okay, I'll go get their wives and children. You take these 4 men back to the Bible college. They were so proud. They got to ride in the principal's car. I didn't have a car. I had a Toyota pickup truck. But they lived in a place where there were no roads and no cars at all, and so they were riding in a car. And so they climbed up in the back of my car. They were so excited, and we got them down to college. What am I going to do with these guys? I had them sleep in the classrooms. Like, there wasn't any other place built for them. I talked to the staff. We got our axes, and we went out and we chopped down trees. We bought trees. We chopped them down. We split them. We started building houses. We went to work on it. We were still going to class, and in the afternoon we were working on houses. And we bought a giant truckload of grass and wove the roofs and got it all finished and got it done. And then, we were teaching a class, and one day somebody said, hey, there's people walking down toward the school down the road. And they're strangely dressed. And I said, who are they? They said, that's the families of those guys that Joseph sent down here, those 4 men. Well, they've been walking for 4 days through the swamps and everything else, and it's been raining for 4 days. So let's go up there and catch them and help carry the stuff back. You see, I was so stupid. I didn't understand. In Papua New Guinea, men do not help women carry burdens. The women carry everything. And I didn't know any better. And I asked some of the students, come and help me. We're going to help those women. They've been walking for 4 days carrying their kids and all their stuff and everything down here, and they're exhausted. And we got to go help them. And I got up there, and one of those little kids just jumped out of his mother's arms into my shoulder. And I got him, and I took this big heavy bag that was hanging on her head. I thought, boy, this was stupid. I kind of dragging it along and carrying it along. And we went down to where those 4 houses were, and all those students brought that stuff down there, and we put the things there. It was only later on I found out that the men weren't supposed to do that, but we did it. And Joseph said, we haven't eaten for 4 days. It's been raining. We couldn't start a fire. We ate a couple of bananas or some other things along the road. We're very weak. So I got in my pocket and I gave the money to one of my students who was standing there looking at the whole thing. And I said, one of the teachers is growing chickens up there. Go and buy 4 of his chickens. They're just about ready to, go into the ministry. So he went to get 4 chickens, and I sent some other, go out to the garden, dig some sweet potatoes, because that's what everybody eats in Papua New Guinea, and some other things for the garden, and bring them over here. Some of you women, bring your big pots, and let's cook up some food for these folks. They haven't eaten anything, and they cooked, and those people just stood there watching everything that was going on. I couldn't speak their local language, and some of them couldn't speak Pidgin. And finally that night, they came to our house to see us, didn't they? Those 4 men. Not their wives, just them. And they brought us 2 bags. They're beautifully decorated. Gifts. They had the bones of all the birds of prey of Papua New Guinea woven into them. And hair from a kind of a rare animal that grows there. And they had made these bags. One of those bags was worth an entire man's year's pay if he had a job. And I couldn't take those bags from them. They were worth a whole year's pay, and here they didn't even have enough money to pay for the college. And I didn't really know the culture and understand what was going on. And you know what my first inclination was? Thanks very much for the offer, but I can't do that. And Joseph was standing there, and those 4 men were standing there, and I heard myself say, thank you very much. I'm really, really blessed with these gifts, and I accepted them. And I'm going to share these with my wife too. And they were very happy, and we talked together. And they went walking down the road, and I was standing there holding those 2 bags, and I said to myself, you dummy, what are you doing? Later, Joseph came back, and he said, those men are tribal leaders in their 4 towns. Whatever they say, the tribe does. If they go to church, everybody goes to church. If they become pastors up there, everybody's going to join their church. He said, I knew you didn't want to accept those bags, and I was praying that you wouldn't turn them down, because if you would have thoroughly embarrassed them, and we would be finished up there. I couldn't go back there. And the Church of the Nazarene would be finished up there because you embarrassed these tribal leaders. But by accepting their gift the way you did, it just overwhelmed them with joy. He said, we went back to the house just before I came up, and they said to me, we're going to stay here, Joseph, and that man is going to teach us how to be like you, how to be like Pastor Joseph. And Joseph said, no, he isn't. That man taught me, and he's going to teach you how to be like Jesus. He said, you mean carrying our kids and our wives' burdens and buying out of his own pocket chickens for us to eat? A whole chicken for each family? We're not used to that much meat. A whole chicken for each family? Wasn't very much meat, but to them it was a lot. Yeah. And telling the students to get food from the gardens and feed us? Yeah. Yeah, he's going to teach you more about being like Jesus. I need to tell you that up there in East Cambia now is another whole district of Nazarene churches, separated from its original parent district. You see, what happens here in this country is you guys in this church, some of you who were here at the time, let us go so that we could be missionaries in Papua New Guinea. And the churches around here gave offerings. About 5 to 6% of our total income for the year goes for World Evangelism Fund. And it pays for missionaries to be flown over there and their housing and other things while they're doing the work that they're doing. These things kind of happen quietly and behind the scenes. And you pray for missionaries who are too stupid to understand where they are and understand the culture and are so dangerously close to making a terrible mistake and messing everything up. But you prayed for them, and God heard your prayers. You sent Alabaster money, and the Alabaster money came, and I got the check, and I cashed it and put it in their money. It was 5,000 US dollars. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but it was 6 times that in their money. And you know what we did? We built 3 classrooms. We built an office for our pidgin-speaking teachers. We built a storage room for all of our books when we weren't using them in classes. And we put offices in for those teachers. And we bought all the desks, and we bought chalkboards, and we put sidewalks up there, and the buildings were completed, and they were lovely for $5,000. There was a whole new department that was built across the street from the main office from Alabaster money. And while that building was going up, some guy came up to me and he said to me, "Look, Principal." I said, "I am looking at it." He said, "Principal, where did the money..." I know this is going to seem a little strange to you. Pardon my nose. It runs. I said, "It comes from Alabaster offering," and he started laughing at me. So what's so funny? He said, "We give Alabaster offerings in our church." And I said, "Well, good." He said, "But tell me, where did the money really come from? Because our Alabaster offerings aren't very much." And I said, "Nazarenes all around the world give toward Alabaster. And a portion of it came here to this college to help build that building so that you could go to class there." He said, "You mean this building is built by Alabaster offering?" I said, "Try to think of millions of Nazarenes taking up an Alabaster offering and what it means." He said, "Well, I don't understand." And I said, "What don't you understand?" He said, "This is Papua New Guinea." I said, "I know where I am." Believe me, by then I knew where I was. It's real as it can be, you know. And he said, "We're a little tiny country. We can't do anything for America. I know that most of this money came from American Nazarenes. It didn't come from us because our little offerings wouldn't add up to this much money. I know." I said, "That's true. About 80% of most world missions does come from the United States, and 80% of the missionaries come from the United States." He said, "That's the part I don't get. Why? You're a big country. It's a nice place. It's a safe place. You know, you have food there, and you have police, and you have things that we don't have. And why do you care about us? We can't do anything in return for America. What are we going to do for you? We can't do anything for you." And I said, and this was one of those times where Jesus helped the missionary to think. It wasn't my brilliant idea. It was just the Lord popped it in my head. I said, "You know what? I don't think they're given the money to be paid back. I think they're doing it for Jesus. And Jesus is blessing it." He said, "Well, we can do that. We can give money for Jesus. We can raise out for Jesus." Let me tell you something. Every time you heard me slap that table, it's like the Garamut being struck. And out there in the mountains, the sound echoes, and it echoes, and it echoes, and somebody hears it. And they pick up they start beating on their Garamut, and somebody else picks it up, and they start beating on, and the cry of the Garamut goes out. Your life, your prayers, the things that you do about world missions is out there echoing long after you've forgotten you've even done it. And it's continuing to touch lives. You probably won't live to see the end of it. But when you get to heaven, you'll hear about it. And that'll be a reason to rejoice. Have we taken up our Alabaster offering yet? I want to start.
That was good. Weren't you blessed? We get to be a part of something bigger than we could ever imagine. And Alabaster is one of those ways that God uses to touch people, and we get to be a part of a story that God is writing. So Gail is going to be playing, And if you brought an alabaster offering this morning, as she's playing, encourage you to just come up and place it here in the box. If you don't have a box, but you want to write a check, feel free to do that as well. If you want to give anything at all, encourage you to come and place it in the box, because what you're doing is you're making a difference in people's lives.
Yes.
And you've made an indelible impact there. And the stories that we're going to hear about what God did through you when we get to heaven, it's going to be amazing. But it all starts with one person saying, Lord, use what I've been given by you to bless somebody else. And that's what Alabaster is all about. So Gail, if you would start to play, and if you brought an alabaster offering, bring it up. God is going to bless it and multiply it.